Behold our protagonist, Dan Wusong, who dominated the entire martial world. In Jianghu, he claimed the title of Fist King, for his bare hands alone were a weapon peerless in combat. One day, assassins from the demonic sect laid a deadly trap. He slaughtered countless foes, but 2 survived. These 2 were formidable, even sacrificing their own pawns to achieve their dark objective. Their cruelty and a sigil on their blades revealed their allegiance to Wuzong. Wuzong charged one of them, vowing to end him within just 10 blows. But every strike veered from its lethal path, as he was snared by his foe's partner, bound by invisible threads across his form. As he unleashed his 9th strike, the puppet master pulled his razor wires on Wusong, rooting him to the spot. The other adversary then ran him through with a sword. Even as his lifeblood ebbed away, he landed his final, 10th strike upon his enemy's jaw, and with that, his world went dark. As Dan Wusong wished to land one last blow before death claimed him, he awoke in a Jewish safe house as Li Jinhyun, the firstborn son of the great Yunham merchant group. As his eyes opened, he inspected his body for wounds and was stunned to find nothing. But then he saw his new reflection in the mirror. His first thought was that someone had placed a mask on it. He then dismissed this theory. After close inspection, once the maids left to summon a doctor, he sought to understand his new reality and began to search. While exploring, he learned this new physical vessel was incredibly weak. Simply walking around felt like a monumental effort. At last, he discovered a ledger titled Yunham Merchant Group, a vast and powerful merchant guild in the Jihua Mountains. After examining the journal, he understood he was now inhabiting Li Jinhyun. This man seemed to be quite a degenerate, based on the letters detailing women and massive gambling debts. After more investigation, he accepted the startling truth that he was reincarnated as Li Jinhyun. Just then, the physician, Gong Sun, entered with a sly, fox-like grin and immediately reached to take his pulse. Pulling his hand back, he told the man that he was fine. Then, this viper of a physician offered him dragon and phoenix soup, proclaiming it a restorative tonic. But truly, this broth was a slow poison for an ailing man like Jinhyun. Ignoring him, Jinhyun abruptly demanded to know how much time had passed since his own death. As Dan Wusong realized it had been only a short while, it confirmed his killers were still out there. Thinking of this treacherous doctor and his ancient foes, he vowed that he would slaughter them all. He had been granted a second chance at life. Days bled into weeks since Dan Wusong was reborn as Li Jinhyun. That morning, his attendants prepared his meal with joyous energy, knowing he would finally have a substantial meal from this day on. Before now, he'd been fed only thin porridge for his health. One maid told the others to make haste, as Jinhyun might return from his walk at any second. Her words were cut off as the door slid open and Jinhyun entered. He surveyed the food and told them to keep things simple henceforth. Just like this, as he moved towards his room, one attendant saw his improved physical form and spoke of his incredible recovery, with the others murmuring in agreement. A short while later, Jinhyun began his breakfast, when the venomous snake Gong San Meng appeared to spoil his peace. Jinhyun begrudgingly allowed his entry. Gong Sun immediately registered the cold reception, but kept a broad smile as he offered greeting. Jinhyun, in turn, watched him with suspicion, knowing this man had a hidden motive. As the doctor groveled, a smirk touched Jinhyun's face, as he intended to make him reveal his treachery. For this reason, he casually inquired about Gong Sun's motive for being here. At that, Gong Sun began his typical theatrical performance, stating he couldn't stand the solitude, so he came to check on Jinhyun. Then he abruptly noted how Jinhyun's vitality looked quite different, insulting all of Jinhyun's hard-won recovery in one comment. This seized Jinhyun's complete attention. He quipped that Gong Sun's concern must mean coaxing him to ingest the Dragon Phoenix soup. Gong Sun was shocked that he knew of the soup's nature, so he frantically explained that Dragon Phoenix soup was merely a revitalizing brew. Jinhyun coolly replied that it was poisonous. Gong Sun reminded him that he was the physician. Sensing his scheme was about to unravel, Gong Sun instantly made a dramatic display, announcing that since Jinhyun had no need for him, he would take his leave. But before he could even turn, Jinhyun's chilling voice stopped him cold. Jinhyun asked if Gong Sun was the master here, since he entered and exited his rooms as he pleased. Seeing his shocked face, Jinhyun laughed, clarifying he was merely making a jest. Gong Sun anxiously laughed along with him. Then Jinhyun commanded him to fetch writing implements, stating he wanted to compose a message. When Gong Sun returned, Jin Yun told him to write it for him. He dictated that Gong Sun had to stay in this estate due to a grave ailment that he was enduring. His following words struck Gong Sun like a bolt. He added that his existence was too prolonged. So Gong Sun required guidance from his master on what he should do. Seeing his frozen hand, Jin Yun asked why he'd stopped writing. He tried to dismiss Jin Yun's words and asked him to clarify. But before he could utter another word, Jin Yun hurled a chopstick with deadly precision, grazing the flesh of his neck and embedding itself in the wall behind him. Now truly terrified, Gong Sun checked his wound. Jin Yun's expression hardened. He stated without ambiguity that he was not the same Li Jin Yun Gong Sun once knew. Gong Sun still attempted to feign confusion, but Jin Yun knew it was time to unmask the snake. He explained coldly that the Dragon Phoenix soup was a potent tonic, but only for those in peak health. Jin Yan's body was far too delicate to handle such a brew, rendering it a lethal poison for someone as ill as him. And yet Gong Sun, despite his medical knowledge, conveniently did not know about this. He had made Jin Yun drink the concoction just yesterday, and the very next morning, he was clearly checking Jin Yun's pulse for the results. Furthermore, when Jin Yun told him to set the soup aside, his face had betrayed an unmistakable murderous intent. Jin Yun declared he knew a pawn like Gong Sun could not be acting alone. He then ordered him to write his master's name on the scroll. Gong Sun first attempted another dramatic display, asking how Jin Yun could doubt someone as devoted as him. Then he let out a long, theatrical sigh, only to drop the facade entirely and show his true face. He sneered that he never imagined a fool like Jin Yun possessed the wit to piece things together. Jin Yun understood the time for pretense was over. Gong Sun admitted his only goal was to murder him, quietly in this remote villa. Noticing the servants, Gong Sun concluded their blood would also need to be spilled to hide Jin Yan's death. But before his poison needle was even drawn, Jin Yan was already behind him. And with a single, devastating blow, Gong Sun was felled, casually continuing his meal. Jin Yan remarked that Gong Sun shouldn't have let his focus wander during their chat. Glancing at his own bruised knuckles from striking Gong Sun, frustration boiled within him over this frail vessel. He just needed to reclaim the immense power he wielded in his past life. He knew that once that was accomplished, he would be a force strong enough to challenge the entire Yunha merchant group if they were the true masterminds behind his assassination. To achieve that, he had to return to the clan to probe Gongsuin's connections. One day, the next instant he collapsed, clutching his head as a sharp pain erupted. He thought of Gong Sun and then the memories of this vessel. Li Jin Yun's entire life flooded his mind at once. After the torrent of memories subsided, a single tear traced a path down his cheek as he learned Jin Yang's true tale. He had been talentless and unremarkable, unlike his brilliant second and third brothers, who were both clever and powerful. To escape his own mediocrity, he did something no rational person would ever do. He began squandering his fortune on vices, which wrecked his health to the degree that, by the time he understood his folly, there was no way to reverse the damage. Under the guise of recovery, he was banished to this villa, which was, in reality, a place of exile. But his family had little concern for their useless eldest son, wasting away his final days. Now, in Jin Yan's body, Wu Song was resolved to resume his martial arts cultivation, a task he postponed, lacking Jin Yun's life experiences. He cursed the original owner of this body, who had squandered a perfect vessel on fleeting pleasures. He resolved to use his past life's wisdom to forge this body anew, by obtaining some powerful elixirs. As he stepped back into the villa, his gaze fell upon the fortune he now possessed, and he felt a wave of relief, knowing he had no monetary worries. This meant he could procure the rare ingredients he needed. Then his eyes landed on Gong Sun, now little more than a lifeless husk. Thanks to his earlier decisive strike, he decided to give the corpse a burial. From that day, a full year passed in the blink of an eye. One morning, Mak and Sayop, a member of the guard squad from the Yunha merchant group, came bearing a letter addressed to Jin Yun. He inquired of a maid about Jin Yun's location, and she gestured to the spot where Jin Yun was deep in meditation. The instant Mak saw his powerful physique, his eyes went wide with sheer disbelief, because he could not fathom he was truly seeing Jin Yun. During this solitary year, our resolute hero used every waking second to temper his body. His energy core had finally taken form, and he had mastered once again all the martial techniques crucial for survival, such as the enlightened mobility art, enlightened body art, and rapid strides. On top of that, he also learned the white lightning 10-phase art, a technique allowing him to command the element of light. Through this arduous training, He had successfully broken into the 4th phase of martial arts. But for a warrior like him, it was far from enough. At that moment, his session was broken by Mok's voice, greeting him and nervously stating his name. Mok revealed that he carried a message from the main family. With serene poise, Jin Yun asked him to present it. Meanwhile, Mok could barely process what he was seeing. This was the same sickly, coughing man he'd met last year. And yet, now he was a pillar of strength. His thoughts were shattered by Jin Yun's voice, tinged with a bit of impatience, reminding him that he was still anticipating the letter. Shaking himself from his trance, both Jin Yun and Mok sat down as he perused the message. It spoke of his father's deteriorating condition, which had confined him to his bed, though the cause was not stated. Hearing this, Mok voiced his anger regarding the Wiang clan. This clan was nothing but a pack of leeches who extorted immense sums from the Yunhua merchant group under the false pretense of offering them security. Recently, the demanded tribute had swelled to an amount that could no longer be dismissed so easily. He asked if the Wiang clan had provided any actual service to justify such a dramatic increase in payment. This enraged Mok, who cursed the parasitic group, saying they had done absolutely nothing to earn it. He recounted a time when the Una group clashed with the little deity sect, who tried to levy a massive tax on their trade routes. At that time, the Wiang clan simply told the group they had no business with them, except when it was time to collect for their protection. Mok added that even the guard captain could not move against them, because Wiang, who was connected to the organization. This name grabbed Jin Yan's full attention, as he recognized it from his days in Jianghu. Wiang Hu, a man of considerable infamy there. Jin Yan now saw the complete, ugly picture. Wiang Hu was a formidable figure, abusing his strength to bleed the Yunhua merchant group dry, whom he viewed as too powerless to resist. In that moment, he resolved that this matter would end in death, where he would personally deliver Wiang Hu a harsh lesson. Mok was stunned, but he continued to another piece of news that had caused Jin Yun's father to fall gravely ill. It seemed his younger brothers had been reckless enough to engage in a duel before the eyes of the entire Yunhua merchant group. He could not fathom their sheer arrogance. Understanding it had enraged their father so profoundly that his body succumbed to the immense stress. Mok attempted to offer some comfort, saying the incident did not involve him, but he silenced him and rose to his feet. He could no longer sit idly by. Mok was startled by his newfound determination. Our hero then sternly told Mok to hold onto the letter, because he would witness the situation with his own eyes. When Mok returned to the guard post, the very first thing he did was spread the word to his allies, proclaiming that someone like Li Jin-young had become a martial warrior. The instant his companions heard this news, they erupted in laughter. Each had their own take on the matter. Some joked he must be skilled in bed, while others remarked that if a man like Jin Yin could be a martial artist, then they themselves must be legendary martial masters. One of his comrades told him to tell a more plausible story, like how the vice captain had finally managed to find a wife. The aforementioned vice captain, Han Yi, overheard their discussion and grew curious to know if Jin Young had truly recovered his vitality after striking the man who dared to touch him. Han Yi then declared with conviction that Jin Young had been a warrior since he was a child, thanks to the blessed body he was born with. Now, Han asked about the date of Jin Young's return. Mok expressed his lack of knowledge on this subject, as he'd only stated his intention to return. At that precise instant, they heard a herald announce Jin Yan's grand arrival, and they knew the time was now. Han then ordered his men to go and pay respects to their young master. They were clearly displeased by this command, so he sharply told them that he was their master, regardless of their feelings. Meanwhile, Wu Song, witnessing the sheer grandeur of the Yuna merchant group's estate for the very first time, was amazed by its immense wealth. In his former life, he had only known tales of this guild, but now seeing it with his own eyes, he understood that Jin Yun wasn't merely prosperous. He was obscenely rich. He told his maids to take their ease, as he was going to see his father. As he moved through the halls, he was taken aback by the deafening silence, as no one offered a greeting. His wish was soon granted, when a massive number of guards welcomed him with drawn steel. Then Han offered his greeting, remarking on how Jin Yun looked almost like a different man. He also proclaimed his joy at seeing him in good health. Han's subordinates thought he was simply groveling to Jin Yun, believing Han had no dignity since in times past their master always berated him for his kindness. In that moment, they were also preparing for a vulgar insult, but they were genuinely stunned when Jin Yun greeted them back by remarking how fine a reception it was for someone so difficult. Seeing their bewildered faces, Mok claimed that he had already informed everyone that Jin Yun had truly changed. Witnessing this, Han, who was guiding our hero to his father's quarters, wore a gentle smile upon his face. And Jin Yun at last began to feel he was a trusted ally, rather than some enemy figure. As they neared, Han told him he had already announced his arrival, for which he offered his thanks. Their talk was cut short by the hand of his youngest brother, Jae-hyun, who greeted him with a derisive sneer while calling him a degenerate. Seeing him like this, Jae-hyun noted that he appeared to be an entirely new person. When Jin-hyun dared to return his hostile gaze, Jae-hyun's hand clamped down hard on his shoulder. Han, who had seen Jin-hyun beaten by his younger brother many times before, did not want him to endure that shame on his first day home. He carefully removed Jae-hyun's hand from Jin-hyun's shoulder, while saying that the two brothers should be glad to see one another after such a prolonged separation. But to his horror, Jae-hyun struck Han for touching him without leave. Jae-hyun did not appreciate his interference and warned him, while asking if he was looking down on him. The next instant, he proclaimed he would teach him some manners. Before he could move, our hero slapped him with enough force to send him to the floor. Jae-hyun was utterly dumbfounded by this act. The next moment, Jin-hyun's hand clamped onto Jae-hyun's shoulder, forcing him to feel his power. While stating he had been quite eager on his journey here, Jae-hyun cried out in agony, spewing curses at his brother while calling him a madman. Hearing this, our hero deadpanned that he would address him as Big Brother from now on. Meanwhile, Lee Hwa-yeon, the UNH merchant group's second-born son, heard a great deal of noise outside of his father's chambers. He questioned Han about it, and the vice captain explained that there was a dispute between his eldest and youngest brothers. Hearing this, Hwa-yeon instantly thought it must be Jian, tormenting their eldest brother again, and rushed in, concerned for his big brother's weakened state. But he was shocked to find it was actually Jin-hyun, sternly commanding his younger brother to be silent when they were before their father's very room. Then he acknowledged his middle brother's arrival. After a brief pause, Hwa-yeon sat across from his eldest brother, who gave Jian a punishment of holding his hands up high. Seeing him, Hwa-yeon felt a sense of relief that he was well. However, Jae-hyun was visibly enraged by the entire affair. Jin-hyun told him that he was in good health now. Then he saw Hwa-yeon's bruised hand and asked if Jae-hyun was responsible. Hwa-yeon tried to evade the inquiry, but our hero furiously wheeled on his youngest brother and struck him again for daring to strike his own elder. Poor Jae-hyun had no option but to obey if he wished to avoid another beating. He couldn't accept this was the same frail Jin-hyun, who once used to rub his shoulders because he was terrified of getting another thrash from his younger brother. The entire scene brought a nervous joy to Hwa-yeon's expression as he considered how Jin-hyun was now disciplining Jae-hyun, when in the past, the roles had been reversed. Then Jin-hyun also took a seat. Hwa-yeon was intrigued about his altered demeanor and physique, but instead of a direct answer, he simply noted that he had a sharp eye. As his attention was drawn to the scrolls before his middle brother, unfurling one, he inquired about the information within. Hwa-yeon stated that the scroll contained a list of personnel who were to join him at the grand conference tomorrow. He then scanned the list of names and saw Gongsun's name, as it was his primary goal to investigate any personnel. After reviewing the list, he knew exactly what he needed. That Gongsun and numerous other employees were recommended by none other than Wei Yang-hu. He then fixed a serious gaze on his brothers and darkly questioned if both or one of them served Wei Yang-hu. Both brothers vehemently refuted the claim, swearing they would not surrender their guild to that vile clan. He smiled, realizing he would not need to kill his own brothers, because their words held the ring of truth. With a plan now forged, he stood and asked if every single high-ranking member would attend the meeting. His scholarly brother confirmed that they would. At that, he announced his choice to attend the conference too. Before they could object, he strode from the room, disregarding their protests entirely. They were utterly astonished by their brother's abrupt transformation. In that moment, Jae-hyun decided he must also go to Juwon Mountain. Meanwhile, Jin-hyun stood before his father's chambers and entered with his blessing. His father, the merchant group's patriarch, Sung-min, saw him right away. He asked about the disturbance outside, but Jin-hyun simply dismissed it as he took a seat. Then, he said he had heard tales of his father being under great duress. His father acknowledged this, adding that he was always under duress, but now his aged body was too weak to endure it. Then his father lifted a hand to touch his son's cheek. Feeling how hale and transformed he appeared, he asked if he was truly his Jin-hyun. As his father expressed his deep relief to see him recover and held him gently, a new feeling awoke within him. As Woo-sung, he had never known the warmth of a family, but now he understood what it was to have a father. He remembered his father as a powerful, broad-shouldered man, but now taking his hand into his own, he realized just how withered his patriarch had become. At that, he offered his comfort, saying he would eradicate all that had reduced him to this state. His father did not seem to believe him, but he insisted that Seong-min must not worry about a thing, as he was the one who would resolve it. Seeing his iron-willed gaze, even his own father began to perspire. The following day, everyone convened in the Yunham Merchant Group's Great Hall. There, Huaiyan was addressing the assembly. Yang, who was, of course, in attendance. His men, who were curious about him, swiftly noticed Jin Yun's arrival. Yang surmised that Jin Yun had appeared to assert his authority in the group. Meanwhile, after Huaiyan concluded his address, he asked if anyone had any issues before moving forward. Yang, who lifted his hand, stating he had a proposition to offer. He recommended a candidate who could serve as a personal guard for Jin Yun, as he was currently without one. At this, a great stir went through the Yunha merchant group over this audacity. But the man who tried to voice this was silenced by Yang, whose glare, which made him sit down. Then, Yang, who asked if there were any other objections to his idea. The entire room was silent, too fearful to speak. Just as he was about to declare it settled, our hero raised his hand to say that he did, in fact, have an objection. He then coolly offered his own suggestion to dismiss the guard squad's leader, Yang, who. The Yunha merchant group members became panicked upon hearing this, while the Yang clan members laughed, thinking he must surely be jesting, as Yang, who was deemed vital for the merchant group's protection. Yang, who, however, was arrogant. He told our hero that he had been sick for too long, that he was unaware he had no power to fire him. The next moment, Jin Yin did what no one foresaw. He slammed his fist on the table with earth-shattering force. Then, deadpanning, he reminded this snake that despite Yang's power, he was forgetting that Jin Yin was the rightful master of the Yunha merchant group. A short time ago, he had already revealed his intent to dismiss Yu Yang, who to Huaiyan. Huaiyan, however, did not believe it was a wise decision, because the Yu Yang clan was far stronger than them. Instead of giving a simple reply, he asked, when one misjudges a warrior of Jianghu, are they not devoured because of their foolish assumptions? Then, he gestured to how many men around them belonged to the Yang clan, making it seem like the Yunha merchant group was being consumed. From within, his scholarly brother, seeing this, finally grasped what he was trying to convey. Then Jin Yun told him that he had no need to worry, because he was going to take care of it. Now, looking at his older brother, Huaiyan realized with a nervous smile precisely how his elder brother intended to resolve. Seeing this, the Yang clan members all drew their swords with hostile intent, demanding that he clarify his words. Han was enraged by their sheer disrespect, drawing steel upon their own master. He moved in front of Jin Yin to shield him, but with a calm expression. Our hero noted how audacious it was for the Yang clan to draw their weapons against their own employer. He warned them in a chilling tone, saying that they must truly be seeking death. Then he abruptly changed the topic of the discussion, stating he would compensate Yu Yang, who because he felt regret. Yu Yang, who was perplexed upon hearing this. Jin Young clarified that he had shattered Yu Yang, whose immaculate retirement scheme. He then detailed what Yu Yang, who had truly been scheming. First, he would murder Jin Yun using gang sign. Then, as he was already, inciting Jin Yun's two other brothers to fight one another. It served Yang's goals perfectly, that their father became ill because of their feud. In the end, all Yang needed to do was control one of the brothers and use him like a puppet to seize absolute dominion over the Yunha merchant group. At that, Yang burst out laughing, claiming that Jin Yong was simply fabricating tall tales. But he continued without emotion that Yang's great plan started to crumble. The very second, he personally executed Yang's killer, Gongsun. Yang, whose eyes went wide at this shocking news. He could not process what he had just been told. Our hero added that he killed the pathetic assassin with a single blow, granting him a merciful end. Then, he flippantly said that Yu Yang, who must put forth more thought to craft a better scheme, if he desired to conquer the merchant group. Furthermore, he added, he would be billing him for the destruction he had caused. Now Yu Yang had heard enough of Jin Yan's insolence. Enraged, he drew back his fist and swore to kill him. Before his punch could even connect, Jin Yan intercepted his fist with his own. The instant their hands met, Yang, who felt a jolt of lightning energy, making him understand that Jin Yin had truly become a martial warrior. Everyone watching was also stunned to see the display of might from our hero, Jin Yin. On the other hand, he theatrically noted that Yang was striking someone who had only just completed his recovery. Then he announced he would let this one transgression pass because they were about to have a sanctioned duel. Someone declared the commencement of the official bout. Yang, who asked if that would truly be sufficient. With a smug expression, he stated that they would battle until only one of them remained alive. After hearing this proclamation, Yang, who coolly stated that, judging by his lethal precision and martial form, but brandishing his blade, he vows he would teach him the vast chasm between their skills that separated them. But Jin Yin effortlessly evades the strike and scoffs at the arrogant boast of experience. As he weaves low, he buries his fist into Yu Yang's stomach, proclaiming he holds a century more experience than Yu Yang ever will. Yu Yang, who spits a mouthful of blood, unable to fathom the true depth of Jin Yun's power. Jin Yun, however, unleashes his enlightened mobility art and vows to demonstrate to Wei Yang what a true gap in combat experience truly is. Now, a blur of motion like lightning. He attacks. Wei Yang barely parries the blow with his sword. The two warriors clash again and again, Wei Yang's steel, meeting Jin Yun's devastating bare hands. But every single blow our hero lands is deflected by Wei Yang's blade during their battle. Wei Yang, who is completely baffled by Jin Yan's fighting style, because it bears no mark of a mere novice. His prowess is that of a battle-hardened master. Wei Yang is resolved to put Jin Yan down. Seeing his posture, his men are thrilled, believing their captain is finally poised to end this duel. With that, Wei Yang unleashes his three-form sword art. Jin Yun instantly ducks beneath the lethal blade and activates his rapid strike. He moves with such speed that Wei Yang cannot even track his new position. The next instant, Wei Yang suffers a brutal punch to the jaw. The shockwave is so immense, it can be seen from the main estate. Servants who see the spectacle whisper in stunned awe, while his father watches with a face full of pride, declaring his firstborn son has mastered the martial path. As Wei Yang, who hits the ground, his men swarm to his aid, seeing their captain's defeat. They are incensed. One man glares daggers at Jin Yun, but he is silenced immediately with a murderous gaze. Another of his followers concedes that the duel was fought without any foul play. However, before departing, he warns that if this is how Jin Yin chooses to operate, then the Wei Yang clan will respond in kind to exact vengeance on the Yunha merchant group, a promise he claims they will be powerless to escape. But Jin Yun is unbothered by such childish threats, as he is no stranger to them. He will return in kind whatever they offer, whether it be animosity or a favor. Furthermore, he accepts all blame for this confrontation, which earns a sharp objection from Huayan. Yet, Jin Yun addresses the crowd and proclaims that, despite his previous statement, that the Yunha merchant group is his alone, it also belongs to his father, to the squad that received him this morning, and to all the workers who serve there. Therefore, he will not suffer anyone to treat his merchant group like a toy. With that, he tells them to be gone, stating he was dismissing them anyway. The entire crowd is overjoyed by his words, all except for the Wei Yang clan, who depart with reluctance, bidding him luck in facing their clan in the days to come. As they leave, one worker is about to shout for joy, but another man quickly silences him, saying that Jin Yun had won a sanctioned duel. Another guard points out they cannot rejoice. After all, they belong to the guard squad. Yet rather than performing their duties, they merely stood by and watched the fight, ignoring the surrounding chatter. Jin Yong turns to Hua Yong and tells him to fetch an elixir, since he has taken full responsibility for this affair. He has earned that much, at least. Hua Yong smiles and promises his brother he will find the finest elixir, adding that he will be quite occupied now. Not only must he procure elixirs, but he also must recruit new men for the guard squad. At this, Jin Young reveals he already has candidates in mind who could take on the role. Meanwhile, somewhere in a hidden chamber, Myung-ho is told the news of Jin Young's recent victory. His men confirm that the unbelievable rumor is true. In fact, our hero has already planned all of this. Days prior, from the moment he arrived at the Una merchant group, he had been observing the patterns of the workers too. On his very first day back, while walking through the estate, he suddenly paused and asked Han if he had yet eaten, completely stunned by the thoughtful and unexpected question. Han replied that he had not, as he had not had a moment to eat since sunrise due to work. Jin then looked down below, where few Yang clan members were idling away time in pointless chatter. In that instant, he grasped the group's broken system. The dedicated Unha merchant group workers toiled so hard, they could not even find a moment for a single meal, while the Yang clan parasites collected their unearned pay, lounging about during their shifts with no true duties. Han spoke to him again, but instead of replying, his thoughts had turned to the solution. If he abruptly dismissed the Yang men, the group would be left defenseless, as he would need warriors to take their posts. After considering it for a moment, he knew exactly where to find the ideal replacements for those lazy guards. For this reason, he journeyed to a notorious gambling den, the sort of establishment that only the lawless would dare enter. The moment he passed through the doors, he became the focus of many eyes. Some gestured at him, calling him a fool, shocked to see his face after so much time. Some even thought he had been dead for years. Assuming he was there to gamble, they gathered to watch him lose his fortune. When he reached the inner room, the doorman welcomed him with a greedy smile, thinking he was about to lose a great deal of money. But this Jin Young was not the weakling they knew. With a veiled but chilling threat, he told the doorman not to lay a hand on him, leaving the man sullen. Then, without any further delay, Jin Young commanded him to unbar the door. Inside, Chul Myung-ho, also known as the Poisonous Fox, looked upon his old acquaintance and remarked that his newfound vitality must be from his long recovery. His cronies, Yuk Jinbo and Yuk Myungo, also greeted him. Myungo, with a sneer, told them to at least inquire about Jin Yun's condition, since he was sick for a long time. At that, the two Yuk brothers offered an apology, while Myungo derisively said that Jin Yun was his companion. Jin Yun sneered at this so-called friendship on the outside. It may have seemed as though they were old friends, but in truth, Myung-ho always used this false friendship as a tool to torment and bleed him of his fortune, preying upon his many faults. With a stern expression, he mused if the new generation had created an entirely new and perverted meaning for the word friendship, oblivious to Jin Young's real thoughts. Myung-ho eagerly told him to begin gambling, proclaiming it had been far too long. In reality, Myung-go was dying to swindle him for a massive amount, knowing that no one else would be so foolish as to walk right into his trap. Faking a friendly tone, Myung-go claimed he would pay for him to honor his return. But when he got no immediate reply, Myung-ho became annoyed and demanded he say something. Jin Young coolly stated that he was contemplating. When his parasitic friend pushed to know what he was thinking, Jin Young did not give an answer. He simply sat there in silence for a time, considering his choices. Should he kill Myung-ho or not? To him, Myung-ho was simply a worthless piece of trash, and he had no desire to keep him alive. The only ones with any worth here were the Yuk brothers, who, despite being mere thugs, actually possessed skills he could put to use. Their talents wasted serving a man like Myung-go. With that thought solidifying in his mind, Jin Yun rose to his feet and coolly told Myung-go to give him the key to the vault. Myung-go blinked, taken by surprise, asking why Jin Yun would suddenly want money. Jin Yun replied with a calm voice, telling him this was simply a single withdrawal of funds, but he added the interest Myung-go owed him for the many thousands of yuan. He was manipulated into funding this gambling den with plus pain and suffering for the times Myung-go ordered him beaten, brought the total debt to around 100,000 yuan. That would be sufficient. Myung-go howled with laughter, taunting him and asking if he'd studied arithmetic in his absence. With a smug confidence, he said that the vault held more than just the money Jin Yun was asking for. It was also overflowing with gold, silver, and precious gems. Still, he said Jin Yun was an idiot if he thought he'd see any of it. At the very most, his so-called offers. He might loan him a bit of cash if he was in need, but the vault key was completely out of bounds. Myung-ho's annoyance grew as he remembered the times our boy won, about being sick, only to appear here, hale and hearty, and dare to ask for the vault key, while completely ignoring him. He icily told Jin Young to return to reality, reminding him just who was standing before him. When Jin Young still refused to reply, Myung-ho moved in, his face inches from his, and asked if he was begging for death at his hands. Still, no reply. Finally done with talking, Myung-ho barked an order to his men to beat Jin Young senseless. One of the Yuk brothers seized him from behind, intending to smash his face into the table. But Jin Young's expression grew cold. This, he thought to himself, was him showing them mercy. The next instant, he sent one Yuk brother flying into the far wall. The other lunged, but Jin Yun moved aside, using the table as a fulcrum, and in a blur, shattered his ankle. That brother crumpled to the floor. Jin Yun turned back, surprised to see the Yuk brothers getting up, in spite of their grievous injuries, their eyes showing absolutely no fear. That look actually thrilled him, as he was now eager to recruit them. Both brothers came at him at once. But in a heartbeat, Jin Yun disappeared from their view. In the blink of an eye, he was behind them, moving at an impossible speed. He grabbed both their heads and smashed them into each other, reminding them icily that he would not give another warning. Now, with the fierce brothers neutralized, the only one remaining was the cowardly Myung-go, who had been cowering behind them. Jin Yun turned to his old friend with a wicked grin. Myung-go, trying to hide his terror, spoke to Jin Yun in a familiar manner, saying he should have told his companions he'd learned martial arts, all the while concealing one hand behind his back. He eyed him with doubt, asking his reason, but replied with his usual composed manner. As Jin Young took a step toward him, Myung-ho's terror peaked, and he produced a dagger, telling him not to take another step. He tried to tell himself there was no reason for fear, as it was only Jin Young, after all. With a surge of courage, Myung-go charged, intending to end this confrontation with a single stab. He smiled from behind the table, thinking it would offer him cover. But Jin Yun kicked the table away, and in the next instant, a single punch from him reduced it to splinters. All that was left was a shocked, wordless Myung-go, whose head he took in his hand. He smiled and calmly said that the counterattack wins this time. The next moment, Myungo screamed in agony as Jin Yun channeled lightning energy through his body. Outside, a guard whispered that someone was going to die today. After the blinding flash, Myungo fell to the floor, soaked in sweat. Jin Yun, unfazed, told him to get himself together. With great effort, Myungo raised his head, his eyes filled with shame, as he wondered what Jin Yun did during his time away. The thought emerged, had Jin Yun trained all this time simply to get his revenge on him? He tried to tell himself that he had not been so terrible to him. But thinking back on his past actions toward Jin Yun, the answer seemed to be unavoidable. This was his retribution. Forcing a weak smile, Myung-ho told our hero to ask for anything but the vault key. That made Jin Yun stop. This was precisely what he wanted to hear. Myung-ho quickly told him that despite his past actions, they were friends from childhood. He reluctantly went along with the lie. Hearing this, Myung-ho's face lit up, and he immediately embraced a very disgusted Jin Yun, promising there would be no more beatings or torment from now on. Jin Yun was not convinced. He shoved him away, wincing and saying his false words were making him ill. Despite his clear disgust, Myung-ho kept talking, saying they were not mere friends, while promoting him to brother. He then immediately turned to his thugs and told them to greet their new big brother. Both of them obeyed without a second thought, looking somewhat lost. Inwardly, however, Myung-ho was smiling to himself, thinking how Jin Yun was a man who once bowed at his feet and trailed him around like a lost dog. The second he had an opportunity, he intended to take his guards and escape. He was sure he could resolve any other issue later. On the other side, Jin Yun spoke to the twins, telling them that when he calls a man brother, that oath is for the rest of their lives. The Yuk brothers looked to Myung-ho for his consent, and Myung-ho told them to make the vow, proclaiming that they were now all sworn brothers. The twins then swore their allegiance to Jin Yun as their new big brother. Myung-ho was pleased with the outcome until his blood went cold when Jin Yun grimly told the Yuk brothers to leave them, stating that he and Myung-ho would now determine who the true big brother was. Despite Myung-go's desperate objections, the twins left the room, now completely unnerved. Myung-go had no idea what his real intention was. Our hero calmly told him that he was the one who profited by abusing the twins. That is not the correct path. So now, Jin Yun will assume responsibility for them, knowing full well that the brothers' loyalty is worth more than gold. Myung-ho protested with rage, accusing Jin Yun of not just beating him, but also attempting to steal the brothers from him. He snarled that he might as well just kill him instead. As harsh as the words were, Jin Yun decided to honor the request by kicking Myung-ho in the face. The next moment, he coldly told him he was doing an excellent job and began to use him as a human punching bag until Myung-go at last understood that Jin Yun felt no hesitation in ending his life. Finally, Myung-go whispered that he would give him what he wanted, but Jin Yun casually told him to speak up. Beaten, Myung-ho at last agreed to surrender the key. Jin Yun smirked and told Myung-ho that he must prove that he was begging for his life. Myung-ho still had the nerve to sneer at the command, asking if he should show more respect instead. He learned his lesson swiftly when Jin Yun tossed him away, leaving him to wonder if he had lost his mind. The instant the Yuk brothers saw him, they both turned and asked if he had lost. With no other path left, Myung-go admitted that he had lost, and that from this day on, they would be in Jin Yun's service. The overwhelming shame made Myung-ho want to weep. For a single second, he thought like a decent human being and chose to let the brothers go, so they might have a superior life with the Yunha merchant group. But when both brothers looked at one another and chose to serve Jin Yun, Myung-ho's annoyance flared up once more at what he considered their betrayal. Once the deal had been concluded, Myung-ho left, angry and muttering, while swearing to never trust black-haired men again. The moment those outside saw he was without the Yuk twins, they prepared to assault him. Now that his protection was gone, seeing the hostile mob surrounding him, Myung-ho's pride flared, saying he was still the poisonous fox, and he reminded them of this with a great shout. He even dared to challenge them to attack him. The men accepted his invitation, weapons drawn, their anger boiling over, cursing his fate for leaving him in this predicament. Myung-ho braced himself for the end, but before a single man could reach him, Jin Yun appeared to protect him. Jin Yun remarked how these cowards did not dare face Myung-ho when he was powerful, yet now they were prepared to tear him apart while he was weak. He told them to challenge Myung-ho only when he was powerful enough to fight them. Then he commanded the Yuk brothers to gather every valuable thing. As they went to follow his command, Myung-ho continued to curse everyone and everything, Jin Yun as well. When they stood before his home, the Yuk brothers gave him thanks for saving their former master. Their gratitude surprised him for just a second. Looking at the twins, he remembered the gossip that some believed they were sold to Myeongo as indentured servants, others that they served him out of terror. Yet, seeing their honest care for Myeongo, Jin-yun smiled softly to himself, knowing that grasping the true nature of man is far more difficult than it appears. Meanwhile, from behind a stone pillar, a figure watched them with care, confirming that Jin-yun was truly there. Now, back in the present, things have settled back to normal. But Jae-yeon is not pleased with the situation. He is still complaining about not having a peaceful day until his older brother came back. He thought of the sudden arrival of riches and gems from the gambling den, along with the Yuk brothers, and the memory made him burn with bitter envy. The next instant, he saw a wagon arriving with fresh materials. Hwayeon inspected them with a keen eye and told his servants to be gentle with the cargo and leave the wagon where it was, saying that the contents were quite valuable. Seeing this, Jae-hyun became intrigued about what was in the wagon. His eyes lit up when he saw a 100-year tuber fleece flower, an item so precious that men wait since before dawn just to find one. He thought it must have been ordered at his request. At that moment, their father emerged. Hwayeon hurried over to him, telling him that it was too soon for him to be up and about in his fragile state. Jian, however, was much more focused on discovering for whom his father had bought so much elixir. He remembered that Jin-yun only required one, so he was optimistic he might receive at least one himself. But his face fell when he learned that all of them were for Jin-yun. Their father stated that after the incident with the Wiang clan, they could not afford to depend on a single elixir. Besides, it was nothing compared to the vast sums of money they had already lost to the Wiang clan and the little deity sect. So, after much consideration, he sent messages to the leaders of their local offices and some powerful figures in the elixir trade, asking for premium elixir shipments. They agreed to assist, as their fortunes were linked, and they all lose from each other's failures. At that, Han backed his decision to support Jin-young, believing he would become a mighty warrior. Salman gave him thanks for his faith. Then, despite the sorrowful face of his youngest son, he announced that he had at last discovered the ideal use for the riches he had amassed his entire life. Jian was livid to learn all of this. He stood in his father's path and insisted he be given an elixir. As well, his father looked at him for a time and then asked if he truly required one. Jae-yeon became even more incensed at this, hearing only the endless praise of his eldest brother's name. He felt there was a clear bias against him and could not fathom why a man like Jin-yeon continued to receive this level of attention. His question was not answered with speech, but with our hero's actions as he sprinted past him at blinding speed. The force of his passing knocked Jae-hyun over as he went by, hauling an enormous boulder on his shoulders. Seeing his brother's determined, sweat-drenched face, Jae-hyun understood that a man like his eldest brother, who already possessed a powerful body and natural confidence, was now finally putting in the work to make it a reality. He lay back on the dirt with a long sigh, then looked with consideration at his sword. After some time, spurred on by his brother's intense training, Jae-hyun started his own sword practice on a wooden dummy. He remembered the technique Jin-yun had used against Wiang-hu during their official bout. After more training, he sighed, annoyed that he could not truly understand the depth of Jin-yun's skill, all while cursing him under his breath. As if called by that very thought, Jin-yun materialized before him, shocking his poor baby brother. Anxiously, Jian asked about his stroll. Jin-yun told him that he was done with it. Then, knowing what his youngest brother had been doing, he gave him his own sword and told him to demonstrate the move Wiang who used on him, while adding praise for his brother's own talents. Embarrassed, Jian knew that his brother had been observing his practice. Taking a blade, Jae-hyun stood and, with resolve, struck the dummy, feeling proud of his technique. His ego was instantly deflated when Jin-hyun called it amateurish. Jae-hyun, now angry at his brother's cutting words, snapped at him, but the next second, Jin-yun's fist flew toward him, only for Jae-yun to block it at the last moment with his blade. Then Jin-yun showed how he had broken Yu Yong-hu's feint, closed the gap, and left him with no options, forcing him to only defend. He said, all this while still kicking toward his younger brother. Jae-hyun tried to de-escalate, saying they should discuss things rather than using their fists. But Jin-yun, clearly wanting to train his brother, did not listen. With no other choice, Jae-yun took up his sword again and decided to play along when he lunged forward to strike. An instant later, Jin-yun ambushed him from the rear, remarking that most people reveal their true power when they are trapped. With that, he drew back his arm for a punch, but halted just before it could connect with Jae-hyun. Terrified, Jae-hyun stumbled backward onto the ground, truly thinking he was about to be killed. Jin Yun explained that in the art of the sword, a stab has a lower chance of success than a slash. He added that Wei Yang, who had used a one-shot kill move, attempting a three-form sword technique against him. This kind of move demands incredible caution, so Jin Yun gauged his own speed precisely to counter it. If he had not, he would have been killed that day. While holding his sword to his brother, Jin Yun thought back to his duel against Wei Yang, who, a man like you, Yang would have been dead before he could even draw his weapon if he still possessed the full might of his previous life's body. But as it stands, his body had not yet regained a quarter of the power he once held as the legendary Fist King. Because of this, he could not simply rejoice in a victory over Yu Yanghu. His mind drifted to the assassins from the demonic sect and the chilling fact that they were even stronger than him. This only hardened his resolve to eclipse the power he held in his past life. His introspection was broken by the voice of Mei, telling him that he had a guest. Before going to receive his visitor, Jin Yun poked his younger brother on the forehead yet again. Somewhere else, a group of men were debating the wild rumor they had heard, that a degenerate like Jin Yun could actually use martial arts. Guang, who did not believe the tale, said how last night he had gone to the gambling den while intoxicated. There, he had seen Jin Yun with the Yuk brothers taking items from the den. He had known it was him, but before he could go back after being sick, he was gone. Jujura Wang and Sima Guk then said that they had come to confirm the rumor themselves. When they opened the door to his room, they found him there with the Yuk brothers. Seeing his powerful physique, they immediately slammed the door again and asked the maid if he was truly Jin Yun, or if some other merchant group had taken him in. The maid told them it was indeed their young master. The men looked as if they might collapse, trying to reconcile the shocking gap between the Jin Yun they had just witnessed and the debaucherous fool from the four heavenly kings they once knew. At that instant, Jin Yun opened the door, scaring the wits out of them. He coolly told his maid to feed the twins and to give them a very large serving of food, as they ate a great deal. Once they had gone, he gave his full attention to his old companions, who were visibly terrified of him. He asked them why they were here. Too scared to give a reason, they simply prayed for their own lives. Dima Guk, Jujur Yang, Guan, and our hero, Jin Young, made up a group called the Four Heavenly Kings, whose primary goal was to chase women and drink wine. Now, these four companions were sitting together, finally having a peaceful meal. While observing them, Jin Young thought of Yunho, who had also said he was his friend. But these fools were another matter. They were more like accomplices in chaos. Their entire world focused almost completely on women and wine. Jar Young broke the silence, asking about Jin Young's health, while Guang felt his biceps, unable to accept that Jin Young had really been trained. Sima, however, quietly studied both his attitude and his body. He knew that this metamorphosis was not something trained by itself could accomplish. Jin Yin had truly become a warrior. They then asked about the origin of his martial arts knowledge, since it was not possible for him to learn such skills on his own. Jin Yin gave them a mysterious reply, saying he had simply been fortunate. Sima noted that it must be like one of the tales. They had only known him from the Jianghu. Jar Yang said that he barely even recognized him. Then, from out of nowhere, Jin Yun said their friend Jin Yun was gone. This caused their faces to change immediately. Still optimistic, Jar Yang asked about their future plans. Jin Yun explained cryptically that he had a score to settle, and in order to pay it back, he was strengthening the Yuna merchant group. His new purpose was no longer to wander without a goal, but to grow even more powerful. Guang and Jie Young were speechless, whispering to one another about this shocking change. Sima, however, wore a much more solemn expression. He remembered the day when Jin Young departed. But Jinian knew the truth. This was a sentence of exile. He had been utterly crestfallen, knowing his own father was ashamed enough to cast him aside. Sima had offered words of comfort, consoling him and urging him to use this time for rebirth, to reforge himself into someone new. At the time, Jinan had only laughed, vowing to change as Sima bid his somber farewell. Remembering that moment, Sima now praised his friend for truly fulfilling that vow. For a heartbeat, the whole group fell silent. Then they all agreed, recalling the day Jinan was sent away, and the others had been too hungover to even see him off. Seeing them argue like children, he sighed, understanding that these alcohol-fueled fools were the true companions of Jin Yang. Pouring wine for his companions, he asked about their own futures now that he had changed. At that, they all nervously swore that they were not the type for change. Still, while raising their cups, they were glad that at least Jin Yin had broken free from the shadow of their group to confront the world. After a day of revelry, all his friends departed, bidding him a warm farewell and telling him to call if needed. On their journey home, they again debated Jin Yan's metamorphosis. Sima then suggested they return home, Jerian teased him about a potential marriage arrangement, but Sima just told him to go home and hit the books. Their playful squabble went on until they decided to visit the sweet scent house to get thoroughly intoxicated. Meanwhile, at that very same sweet scent house, the leader of the little deity sect, Yongji Sang, was enraged upon learning of Yu Yang, whose demise. Members of the Yu Yang clan recounted the entire tale of the death match between Jin Yin and their fallen captain. When the sect leader inquired about the weapon Jin Yin used, they replied that the former Fist King fought only with his bare hands. Hearing this, the sect leader's face clouded over with anger. The Wiang clan members demanded he seek retribution, but the sect leader told them that they could not exact revenge for a sanctioned duel. And Wiang clan member argued, saying the sect leader and Wiang who had been like brothers, and that he must respect that sacred bond. Yam Ji Sang's rage erupted, and he snarled that he owed no loyalty to a dead man. He then commanded them to remove the body and offer an apology to his escort for the mess. After they left, Yam Ji Sang's mind turned to his next crisis. The UNH merchant group had stopped paying their protection fee. Without Yu Yong as their inside man, they had lost their primary weapon. His subordinate noted that their refusal to pay was a clear defiance of the sect's dominance. Yong Ji-san concurred. The subordinate then asked if he would kill them, but their master shook his head, replying that they were not common street thugs. The subordinate insisted, asking if he would just let them defy him. Before he could reply, Yong Ji-sung saw 3 of Jin Yun's companions, still talking about their friend's incredible change. He registered their presence and walked near them, deliberately speaking the name of the Yuna merchant group, making his voice just loud enough for them to overhear. He wondered aloud how much fortune Jin Yun's father, and Jin Yun himself as the next in line, truly commanded. Sima heard the comment and took the bait. After that, Sima hurried to his friends and told them everything. But Jin Yun merely yawned at the information. Sima warned him that they could launch an attack at any time, especially now that they were without a security force. After dispatching Wiang Hu, meanwhile, Jin Yin was already contemplating the little deity's set. A Madarmok had already briefed him on. After a brief moment of consideration, he asked Sima where the sect's members were located. Sima told him they were at their headquarters. Jin Yin then told him to come with him and gave him a cloak to wear. His loyal friend did as he was told. While asking again for their precise coordinates, Jin Yin replied they were at the guard squad's armory. When Sima understood that he intended to march straight to the little deity sect's base, he panicked. He told Jin Yin that it was only the 2 of them, while the entire sect would be waiting. And they didn't even have a solid strategy. While drawing a weapon, Jin Yin told his friend that this was the strategy. Then, holding the blade lightly to Sima's neck, he commanded him to show him the way. His poor friend had no other option but to lead him to the little deity sect's fortress, where scores of guards kept watch over the main gate. Finally, at the front door, Sima told him that he was worthless in a real fight. He coolly told his companion to go. As he was entering the fortress alone, Sima was somewhat hurt by the dismissal and cautioned him one last time about the foolishness of storming a place with hundreds of warriors. But Jinian simply kicked the door wide open and announced that he would do exactly what he always did in his former life. As Dan Wu sung, our hero's creed was simple: never retreat from a battle. Not when he was a mere orphan clawing his way through Jianghu, and not even when he reigned as the legendary Fist King. Even now, he would not take a single step back, especially not when it concerned his love of combat. The instant everyone saw the door burst open, they turned to face him. But our hero strode in without any fear and demanded to see their master. One guard, enraged by the intruder's sheer nerve, moved forward to strike him down. But Jinian was faster, grabbing the man by the throat and felling him in a single, fluid motion. The guards told him that he stood in their den before the battle could worsen. The sect leader himself arrived, drawn by the sounds of fighting, and demanded to know who he was. Jinian calmly stated he was an assassin. The sect leader was entertained, as he had never in his life met a killer who walked in so boldly. Then his eyes settled on Jinian's bruised hand, and a memory returned of the talk he'd had with a man from the Wiang clan. In a flash, he knew exactly who was standing before him. Jin Yun. Our hero arrogantly replied that he might be Jin Yun. This brought a smile to the sect leader's face, as he certainly did not expect a man like him to invade his private domain. But this made his own plans much simpler. He would make full use of this unexpected gift. Without a moment's pause, he told his guards to capture him. Meanwhile, our hero recalled the last time he faced a crowd of foes in his past life. As the melee began, he knew that his current vessel was not at the same peak condition as before, but that would not stop him from enjoying this. With every blow, he sent guards flying left and right, punching and felling them in a brutal dance. Some guards began to back away, terrified by the demonic power he wielded, while fighting so many enemies with just his fists. Then, abruptly, he stopped for a moment, as an arrow sliced a line across his cheek from behind. Turning with a smirk, he playfully accused the sect leader of brandishing his fancy sword. The sect leader conceded the sword was, indeed, quite valuable, and one he seldom drew. But for an opponent as strong as this intruder, he was prepared to make an exception. Then, at the sect master's command, the guards at Jin Yan's feet held him in place, while dozens more appeared on the roof with crossbows aimed at him. Our hero thought with a grim smile, so the sect master lacks the courage to fall with his own loyal men. But suddenly, he heard Sima's voice calling out his name, followed by a dagger flying through the air. Jin Yan snatched it from the air and, in one graceful arc, deflected every single incoming crossbow bolt. The force of the impacts also broke the guard's hold on it. The sect leader could only stare, dumbfounded by what he'd just seen. Our hero gave his loyal companion a thumbs up, then returned his focus to the battle. He threw the knife directly at the sect leader, the blade just grazing the skin of his neck. In a cold voice, he said the sect leader was the sole exception, for whom he was willing to use a weapon, instead of his fist. Now, desperate, the sect leader screamed for his men to kill him. But before he could even finish, our hero was upon him, fists raised. The cowardly leader did not hesitate to use his own lover as a human shield. In a precise, controlled blow, Jin Yan struck the man, while at the same time pulling the woman out of harm's way. He told her to flee, then fixed his gaze on the sect leader, now trembling like a trapped animal. Just like every other foe Jin Yong had confronted, this man knew he could not possibly be the heir of the Yuna merchant group. Only a true martial master could fight like this. To save his own skin, the sect leader offered Jin Yun a vast fortune. Before the man could even finish his offer, our hero buried a fist into him, sending him to the floor with cold decisiveness. Jin Yun said that he had no need for money from a man who prized it more than a human life. After beating him without mercy, he ended the man's pathetic life, his face contorted in disgust at the sight of this trash's blood. With the battle concluded, Jin Yan departed with his friend and the sect leader's lover. Sima volunteered to see the woman home, and Jin Yan accepted. The two then went their separate ways. As they walked, the woman immediately identified Sima. Flustered, he removed his mask. She told him she had seen his face many times at the Sweet Scent House. She offered her sincere thanks and swore to buy him the finest wine. The next time he was there, he dismissed the offer, saying he would not be going to any betrothal next time. She commented softly on his own change, glancing toward his friend. He coolly replied that he was willing to change, having been moved by Jin Yun's own metamorphosis, while Jin Yun, for his part, was already thinking about his next meal. After bathing in his chambers, Jin Yan sat for breakfast with the Yuk brothers. He told them to eat as much as they wanted. Overjoyed by his kindness, they asked if they could eat 7 meals a day, to which he agreed without a moment's hesitation. Then they saw the fresh cut on his face and inquired about what had occurred last night. The question brought him back to the memory of the ambush, an incident that had truly shaken him. It was not the kind of event that would have bothered him in his past life, but now it made him know he must go past his normal training. He had to keep pushing his limits, both to prepare for his revenge on the demonic sect and to continue to build the Una merchant group. At that moment, he was told he had received a package. Opening it, he saw a note from Guang. Inside the box, the note playfully teased him for getting better, while saying he only had 1 cup of wine last night. In truth, Guang had gone to make a delivery at his father's request, but had forgotten, so now he was sending it over this way. He closed the letter by bidding Jin Yan adieu, and telling him to become stronger, for the honor of their degenerate group. When Jin Yan opened the crate, he discovered several century-old tuber fleece flower roots. He was shocked to realize that these herbs could be nearly 500 years old. This meant they could help him elevate his lightning. 10 phase art all the way to the 5th phase. Then he inspected another parcel with a box inside. Inside, he saw a letter from the Taiho merchant group, sent to his father as a show of friendship. He knew that his father must have leveraged his influence to petition the Taiho merchant group, which was one of the wealthiest in the Central Plains, to send over these priceless materials. When he opened the box, his eyes widened at the sight of azurite essence, which was a legendary treasure for martial artists, second only to the mythical natural wine berry, the moonflower, and the 10,000-year snow ginseng. This elixir was so precious that warriors would kill for it. As he breathed in its aroma, he was sure it was true azurite essence, having tasted a few drops in his previous life. What he could not grasp is how his father had ever managed to acquire it. Then, without a second thought, he tossed each tuber, fleece flower root, to each of the Yuk brothers, telling them to stand guard outside his room, While he concentrated on circulating his chi, he also told them to consume the roots. Once he came out from his room, one of the Yuk brothers looked at the item in his hand, intrigued. Jin Yun explained it was something that would make them stronger, but told them not to lose it because it was priceless. One of them was amazed to hear this. Then, he casually mentioned that his father had brought scores of similar elixirs, just for him. Jin Yun sighed, at last knowing that it all came back to money. After eating the root, Jin Yun sat, cross-legged, in his room, meditating and gathering chi for the next 2 hours. The taste was vile, but he thought that was what made it so much like martial arts. Agonizing, yet powerful. Soon, he felt a fire build in his core from the elixir, and he was grateful that he had been tempering the vessel of this new body. But then a searing pain exploded through every fiber of his being. He tried to fight it, but it became more and more agonizing. Grinding his teeth, he decided to face it head-on, channeling all his chi to overcome it. After several excruciating seconds, he finally let out a long sigh. As the pain subsided and his core began to settle, then he summoned his lightning art, a victorious smile on his lips, as he knew he had achieved the 5th phase. Looking at himself, he saw that he reeked of alcohol, thanks to this body's previous owner's heavy drink. With a smile, he bid the old Jin Yun farewell. Now it was time to consume the azurite essence, which was not a simple task. Most bodies would crumble like dust in a forge under its power, but he knew he had to master it. The next instant, he felt the spiritual energy of the essence envelop him, as if it were testing him. At first, he decided to restrain his hunger for power. But then he changed his mind and pushed against the energy, resolved to overcome it and become overwhelmingly powerful. 7 days passed as he stayed locked inside his room, wrestling with the essence. His scholarly younger brother became concerned for him. He was blocked by a Yuk brother, who told him that their master had strictly forbidden anyone from entering his room. Before his scholarly brother could reply, a huge explosion burst from his room, and he stood there like a phantom, his eyes burning with purple lightning. The Yuk brothers were terrified by the vision, but Huaiyan, the most clever among them, instantly knew it was the infamous energy deviation. By the smell in the air, they rushed to him. As he fell to the floor, the Yuk brothers frantically tried to awaken him. Huaiyan, worried and terrified, went to his eldest brother, who lifted his head with the same fearsome expression. Jinian stood and stared at his brother. His expression made him look like a vengeful spirit. He began to walk away. When his middle brother asked where he was going, he said that he needed to cool his head and told them not to dare follow him, leaving a very confused Huaiyan to wonder at his words. He was leaping from rooftop to rooftop at incredible speed, trying to escape not just his home, but also his entire street. The energy boiling within him, thanks to the azurite essence he had ingested, had made him almost lose control. Jinyan's body was not yet ready to handle the essence's might, which was becoming too much for even the Fist King. So he fled the populated areas to keep the people safe from himself. After some time, he was far away and stopped in an empty field. The power was still raging within him. Remembering the stab wound he'd taken in his past life, he decided to vent the energy from his body. He vented the energy in a massive blast, visible from miles away. As it burst from the earth, rain began to fall on him as he stood there, content with his power. Checking the level of his white lightning 10 phase arc, he grinned, realizing he had attained the 8th phase because of this energy. When he returned to the city, his clothes were in tatters from the energy he had released. Seeing the looks of the people around him, he bought new clothes. When he asked the merchant for the price, the man would not accept his money, knowing he was the one who had defeated the violent gangs, like the Wiang clan and the Little Deity sect, driving away the other criminals. He gestured to his children, saying, "They came here after this," so it was a sign of his immense gratitude. The children also gave him an umbrella, and with a smile, he at last accepted their thanks. Outside, he saw the peaceful looks of the people around him, and knew the shopkeeper had been right. He had never understood the effect his fight had on the common folk, but seeing the shopkeeper's words and the smiles of the townspeople, he felt a peculiar feeling that he enjoyed. Suddenly, the calm was shattered by loud screams. He looked up and saw a group of men pursuing Myung-ho. His chameleon friend immediately greeted him with a grin. Looking at his rival, he dryly noted his eventful life. Meanwhile, at the estate of Moyang-chan, the Emperor Assembly was in session. The discussion was being led by the Daiko clan's patriarch, Daiko Meong, who was praising Meong Bin for his excellent work in assembling all the leaders of the Emperor Assembly factions. Meong Bin waved off the praise and went to the leader of the Wiang clan, Yang Sayong, concerning the death of Yang Hu at our hero's hands. The Wiang patriarch was quite mortified to hear this, especially when Moyang Bin said that Wiang, who was a pro martial artist, who frequently caused problems with the Yunna merchant group. Now, the chief of the Emperor Assembly, and the patriarch of the Namgong clan mocked him. Wang Hu had also been known as one of the most powerful martial artists, yet they found it absurd that a man like him was defeated by a simple member of a merchant group. The leader of the Wang clan tried to say that Wang, who had already been exiled from the clan, but he grimly stated his desire to teach Jin Yun a lesson, to make him understand the might of his clan. On the other side, our hero and his parasitic friend were being pursued by the Crimson Reaper Alliance group. They insisted that he surrender Myungo, who told Jin Young about these wannabe kings. In the downtown area, Myungo clarified that these men had stolen the ledgers he had for his auction business. He then asked his old friend about his hand's condition, showing his battered hands. Myunho said that he could hear them. Seeing this, he turned to the street thugs and told them to get Myunho once his hand were fully recovered. Everyone began to question the sanity of our hero, casually speaking to them in this manner. But when Jin Yun did not react to their insults, they knew he was not a common man, that he had a powerful aura. Still, they were angry and moved to attack him. One of the thugs stopped the others and came forward. He asked Jin Yun if he knew their true power. The next moment, he was about to threaten our hero, but he never got to finish his sentence before a sharp poke from Jin Yun sent him flying into a wall. Far away, everyone was stunned to see this, unbothered by their shocked faces. Jin Yun coolly told them to disappear, saying it was time for him to eat. Otherwise, he might kill them due to hunger. It would be better for them to return another day. He even said that either he or Myungo would find them for their fight later. Finally, the Crimson Reaper gang understood and bid them farewell for now. Now, Myungo had the nerve to ask him to buy him some food, specifically noodles. He even said that when Jin Yun beat him before, he nearly died because he was so hungry, and went on about the necessity of food for his healing. At last, Jin Yun told him to be quiet, saying he should just ask him without so many words. They then went to Jin Pyong's to get some noodles. Myung-ho was very glad to have a proper meal, but then he saw a difference in his friend's eating style, as he was a man who once ate very little. Now eats like he has been starving for weeks. He gave him a small lecture on the nature of change, and then requested 4 more bowls for his friend. The talk turned to the Yuk twins, as our hero told Myunho that they were in good health, and often trained at his estate. Myunho spoke of their massive appetites, which put a large strain on his finances when they were with him. Jin Young coolly told him that he was rich enough. His old friend annoyingly replied that he plundered his money too. The conversation then changed, as Mingo grew curious about Jin Young's source of martial arts training. His friend asked him why. Young Ho casually replied that he wanted to crush the Crimson Reaper gang, and martial arts could be very useful for him in that fight. He also provided intel about the gang's leader, who has hundreds of men wherever they go. There are so many of them, though. They retreat when it is required. At that, Jin Yun offered to train him himself, which Myung-ho accepted without hesitation. He swore to follow his every command, which Myung-ho took with gravity, as he was not called Poisonous Fox for no reason. The next moment, he shocked his greedy ex-friend by ordering him to bow before him. Myung-ho was deeply shamed, but he still bowed. Then he rose, while whining about Jin Yun, saying he had better teach him after this. The next moment, our hero opened his umbrella and showed him how to rotate his wrist for a sword technique. This infuriated his old friend, as he had just bowed while complaining, saying how he was going to dump refuse at his merchant group's gate. But the next moment, he was struck by that same umbrella, as Jin Young told him to hold it with one hand and swing it in the same way. He showed him he must do this with the borrowed umbrella hundreds of thousands of times before coming back to find him. Myung-ho paused, doubting if he could truly do this feat so many times, while using his own title as a taunt. Jin Yun told him to abandon learning martial arts if he could not do this. Myung-ho was still doubtful, even after the threat. Our hero decided to give his former friend a dose of reality. He seized his collar and told him that killing a man is not a child's game. The umbrella swinging drill will strengthen his arms, so he can kill dozens of Crimson Reaper gang members with a wooden sword. Yet so far, he had only been running in fear from them. Then he deadpanned that someone as pathetic as him should just die. Myung-ho nervously said that he did not want to die. Calmly, Jin Yin told him to make a choice. Did he want to become a man who deserved the name Poisonous Fox, or remain a cowardly insect? For a long moment, his old friend was silent. Then he at last asked to borrow the umbrella and left with it, after paying his bill and sending off. His friend, Jin Yun, reflected on what he had said and wondered if Myungo would commit to the training or not. His mind then returned to the Crimson Reaper Alliance gang, and he decided to honor his vow to hunt them down. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Passion House, the leader was enraged, beating some of his men, while others trembled at what was transpiring. He demanded to know why they had let Myungo escape. After learning the whole story, the gang leader contemplated but he could not accept the idea that a merchant group's scion could stand against his vicious underworld thugs. One of his subordinates clarified that Jin Yin was not just a man claiming to be a master of martial arts. Some even claimed he was the most powerful man in the Manhwa region. But seeing his master's face, he did not complete his sentence. The leader then told the others to go back to the group, tasking them with locating both of them. He deadpanned that he wanted both Myungo and Jin Young dead. Meanwhile, our hero was also gathering intel on the Crimson Reaper Alliance, and its master, one of the Yuk brothers, told him that the gang was legendary for dismembering their enemies. Until now, they had slain many great leaders of various sects, such as the Napio sect, the Horn sect, and so on. After doing so, he conquered these weaker factions in the Yukon region, making his own group even bigger. As a result, shops and guilds in the Yukon region had no other choice but to pay protection money to the Crimson Reaper Alliance, no matter what kind of business they operated. They were hunting Minho because of that same tribute money. Jin Young then clarified that the gang had seized his old friend's entire auction house. The Yuk boys confirmed, saying that an act like this would be typical of the gang. After learning all of this, our hero knew he had no other option but to hunt down the gang. Otherwise, his merchant group would be caught up in the conflict. Once they discovered his identity, while at the Yuhuan shopping district, inside the Passion House, the madam was instructing her staff. When they all heard a piercing scream, they all ran toward the girl. One of the escorts told her that the girl was with the leader of the Crimson Reaper Alliance. But then they grew concerned about another girl, who was still inside the room with the leader. Seeing the girl's terror, the madam told her employee to take her to her room and let her recover while she handled the new arrival. Meanwhile, the workers were ordered not to bother the leader of the Crimson Reapers. Django then went to her newest client, who was none other than our hero. She attempted to charm him, but he bluntly asked for the Crimson Reaper leader. Jang Ho asked if he had a meeting scheduled. He even asked if he would find the leader upstairs. Jang Ho paused, curious about his identity, but admitted anyway that the leader was indeed upstairs. As he went up the stairs, he told her to clear the area as he was going to see the leader. Seeing that the second girl was still inside, she tried to warn him of the leader's incredible power. However, our hero was unfazed. As he moved forward in front of the leader's men, the guards told him that this was a forbidden area, but he continued on when a guard tried to block his path. The Crimson Reaper Alliance prepares for war, demanding if this ignorant fool even knows who he faces. Unfazed, he repeats his demand for the location of their master. It seems the entire floor swarms with Crimson Reaper assassins as a horde of warriors rushes straight toward him, their eyes burning with murderous intent. Jin Yun, however, coolly informs them he plans to slaughter them all. One lunges at him with a drawn sword. He seizes the man's skull and hurls him aside. Another thug charges toward him, but he sidesteps the lunge, killing him with his own blade. He then smashes open the door to one chamber, but it proves to be the wrong one. He wonders aloud if he must demolish the doors to all the rooms, just to locate their leader. Without a moment's pause, he shatters every door on the level, but the master is found in none of them. He realizes the hunt must continue on the next floor up. After some time on the 5th floor, the leader is in his chambers when the door suddenly explodes inward. His subordinate quickly tells him that the man who did this is none other than the merchant group's son they have been searching for. It seems the leader has also heard the battle outside and nonchalantly asks if our hero is here to settle the debt of his former friend. Jin Yun, in return, casually notes that the leader is on a much higher floor. The leader asks if he is scared to climb any further. While facing the welcoming committee of his men, our hero moves forward without fear, telling him that it is his talent to pull off these kinds of feats. When he stands before the leader, the massive man seems like a titan compared to him. This so-called titan notes the size difference and smirks, stating that his own talent is looking down on people. Seeing his arrogant expression, Jin Yin knows that he is the classic kind of underworld trash, so vile that he feels no remorse in beating him down. This is precisely why he enjoys these kinds of thugs. The next second, he sees a young woman behind the leader, visibly wounded. The leader follows his eyes and grins proudly, stating that he lost control of his power. Our hero is utterly enraged by a man who has no soul, and likely never did. He told the leader to release the girl, all while deciding on the method he will kill him with. Seeing the fire in his gaze, the leader says that all who come to end his life have that same burning look, but in the end, he tears them to pieces with his bare hands. Meanwhile, people outside flee in terror from the ensuing chaos. One of the members screams that a lunatic is trying to destroy the Passion House. It seems that this lunatic is not our hero, but his so-called childhood companion, who is swinging an umbrella and forcing everyone back. He has at last swung the umbrella 2,874 times. However, he is infuriated, knowing he has not yet finished the task of 100,000 swings, and he begins to count all over from the start. Suddenly, he hears a massive boom behind him. As he turns to look, his mind wanders, thinking if it has to do with his friend. On the other hand, Jin Yun kicks the leader with such power that it launches him clean out of the building, shattering the wall behind him. The leader looks up at our hero, who, instead of just standing and watching, leaps after him, landing with grace before his enemy. Even after that fall, the Red Reaper gets back up, prepared to face him as he takes a weapon from his man. With all his might, he hurls the weapon at him, but Jin Yun avoids it, leaping high into the air. He tries once more, but this time, Jin Yun calmly catches the chain, while the handle is still in the leader's grasp. This also gives the Red Reaper a chance to feel the raw power of our hero, which is equal to his own. So he drops the weapon and charges him, in order to finish him off with his ricochet force. He is certain that Jin Yun will not be able to stop this blow. Looking at the technique, our sharp-eyed hero instantly knows it as the meteor, hammer, and fist technique. He also sees that this man must have been trained by some orthodox martial master, judging by his refined fighting style. However, the leader misjudges him. Jin Yun is a fist king, and he effortlessly stops his enemy's strike. The next instant, he punches the man viciously in the stomach, drawing a sharp cry from him. Looking at his wounded stomach, the leader instantly recognizes Jin Yun's fist-based style and prepares himself to give him a true battle. His muscles bulge with immense power as he surges forward, ready to tear him limb from limb. As calm as ever, Jin Yun seizes his neck and slams him to the dirt without any struggle. The leader cannot fathom why he is at a disadvantage against this man, even when he is fighting with his full power. Now, our hero seizes his face and throws the leader's own insult back at it, that now he is the one who is looking up at Jin Yun. He then unleashes the second stage of his white lightning arm, while still holding onto the leader's face, who is now howling in pure agony. With each passing second, he raises the stage to the next level, until he is at the terrifying fifth phase. The Crimson Reaper Alliance thugs, seeing their master twisting and hearing his screams, wonder if they should dare to intervene to help him, though their expressions clearly show the terror that holds them back. One of them identifies the technique of the white light, 10 stage art. When Jin Yun is finished, everyone is horrified to see nothing but a pile of ash, where their master had just been. Getting to his feet, he looks icily at the Crimson Reaper group and demands, who gave them the authority to collect taxes and protection money from the hard-earned money of the common people. Then he tells them if they wish to show off their power, they should challenge him first. He warns that they will suffer the same fate as their master. Meanwhile, the Crimson Reaper Alliance is now enraged, thinking that since he is just a single man, they might just be able to kill him. Then Myungo, observing him, wonders aloud that if the Red Reaper is dead, they may no longer need to pay tribute. The man next to him says that Jin Young might start to demand protection money himself, but Myung-ho instantly rejects this, standing up for his childhood friend. He knows that his friend already has so much money, he would never resort to such a thing. Then he begins to count his umbrella swings once more, which makes a bystander comment on his strange behavior, calling him a madman. With every single strike, Myung-ho swings his umbrella. He thinks back to the time when Jin Yoon asked him if he truly wanted to be an insect, or a poisonous fox like he pretended to be. He knows that all people have a fire in their soul to do something, and it is his own duty to feed that fire. He knows that his friend wants to be powerful, to a degree that it is almost insanity. But then, he stops, looking at his friend battling the Crimson Reaper thugs, and declares that he is the poisonous fox, not some cowardly insect. After handling the Crimson Reaper Alliance, Jin Yun doesn't even bother to clean the blood from his clothes. When his worried, scholarly brother appears at his door, he says as an excuse that he was out for a drink. His middle brother came to get some counsel on a problem, but the concerned man wants to know about the blood. Our hero reassures him while saying that it is not his, which his brother had already figured. Then Hwaeon finally gets to the reason that he came here, because he wants to give the merchant group something, as a sign of their appreciation for giving such rare elixirs. First, he wishes to give something to the Taiho merchant group, but wants to know the value of the medicine they sent. At that, Jin Yun thinks that the said group was the one that sent the azurite essence, and replies that the value is so immense that a man like him cannot even calculate its true worth. His brother is stunned, unable to imagine what could be offered for something so incredibly rare. Jin Yun says that sending riches or goods is a bad idea. To his brother's shock, He suggests creating a merchant alliance instead. He continues, saying that besides powerful names like Taiho, there are also weaker groups like the West Escort Establishment that do not have any real form of protection. An alliance such as this would be a perfect way to repay them by giving them security. Hwayeon is doubtful, feeling it is a task too great for them to handle. Jin Yun tells him to begin on a smaller scale, just involving the Taiho Merchant Group and the West Wind Escort Establishment. For now, as a method of repayment. The scholarly brother, already deep in planning, wants to know the laws and the membership dues. Jin Yun tells him not to collect any dues for now, and to make the rules very simple. His brother wants to know the goal of the alliance. At that, he thinks of the words of the escort establishment's leader, who had begged him for his protection after he drove 2 criminal organizations from that city. So he says that their goal is to protect the lives of merchants. Besides, he wants to create a clear line of contact, so they can contact him in desperate times. His brother notes that situations might happen, which even powerful groups like the Taiho Merchant Group cannot resolve. For example, if a man from the underworld of Jiang who attacks them, what sort of action would he take? He states with resolve that he will personally handle such issues, which makes his brother pause. But he says that since the merchants gave him medicine that made him stronger, he can do this much for them as repayment. Then comes the problem of naming the alliance. Hua Yin proposes calling it the Great Merchant Alliance, but he says no, not wanting it to sound like the Crimson Reaper Alliance, and changes it to the Great Merchant Association. At that point, Hua Yin also tells him that ever since his degenerate brother returned, his own duties have increased. He apologizes, but Hua Yin waves it off with a smile, saying it is good for merchants to keep themselves occupied. At that instant, one of their workers comes shouting that a new crisis has appeared. When questioned, he says in a panic that Lord Wiang and his followers have arrived in person. Meanwhile, the said group is seated in the main hall of the merchant group. Lord Wiang is still enraged over the shame he endured during the Rulers Association Summit. So he tells his disciples that each one of them must take a turn battling Jin Yun because he wants to grant him a slow death. Besides, their family's honor cannot be regained with a single win. All of them agree without question. Then, Shin Sobik asks if his 2 allies will be using blades, since he intends to fight with his bare hands. Yang Myong says he will use his fists as well, but one is not as sure and plans to use his sword. His brother mocks him for his choice, but one explains that Jin Yin is a man who has beaten someone, like Yu Yang-hu, who had a great deal of experience in Jianghu. Myung, however, sneers at that, thinking Yu Yang-hu is not very powerful. Finally, he smugly tells the servants to bring Jin Yun to them, but instead, the Yuk brothers appear and tell them that they are to go to the annex at the request of their master. After a time, the guests stand before a hero who is already there to receive them. He welcomes them, and all 3 warriors state their names. He is, however, shocked by the appearance of Lord Yu Yang, who apologizes for the unannounced visit, but says he could not help coming to see his power. Jin Yun knows they have come here for a battle and asks about the particular format. Lord Wiang proposes that he battle all of his disciples, since they wish to learn from him, while declaring the rules. Whoever loses consciousness is rendered immobile or is thrown from the ring will be the loser. Jin Yun agrees to the simple rules and tells them to start the bout. The first is Mayong. Lord Wiang is very sure of his son's victory. Meanwhile, Mayong feels that it is not as if he is facing just a merchant's son, but instead a veteran Jianghu warrior, which makes him know that Jin Yan's win over Wiang-hu must have been legitimate. Jin Yan asks about his weapon, but before Myong can finish his arrogant reply, he takes a brutal punch from Jin Yun that sends him flying into the far wall. The cup in Lord Wiang's hand shatters from the pure shock. Jin Yun calmly tells him he can draw a blade if he gets the chance, then tells the next challenger to come forward. Then one decides to go next, and tells Shin to watch over his brother, which Shin agrees to. Once he is standing before our hero, one is prepared to use all his strength and techniques. And Jin Yun wants him to do just that, to have a good fight. With that, the battle starts. Without wasting a single second, one draws his blade in a flash. He charges toward our hero, trying to land a blow, but Jin Yun easily sidesteps. At the same time, he sees that one is a very skilled swordsman. However, Jin Yun is more clever as he begins his own attack. After watching the rhythm of one's swordsmanship while evading, that is why he can now avoid every single blow with just his fists. Now, it is time for Jin Yun to go on the attack. He starts with the 5th phase of his lightning arm and drops his energy level to the 3rd phase. One prepares himself, trying to stop the attack with a sword swing. The next instant, Jin Yun sends a lightning roar attack right at him, felling his opponent with a single devastating blow. Shin can't believe it. Myung says that they should end the duel, because if all 3 of them are defeated, it will bring them even greater dishonor. However, Shin is not prepared to give up the chance to fight someone who uses only their bare fists. Since he himself has mastered the art of palm strike techniques, he asks to spar with our hero. Seeing his fists, Jin Yun becomes truly thrilled to fight someone with true skill. With that, the two fist masters clash. The clash goes on for a time, with Shin attacking and Jin Yun evading. But Shin becomes annoyed that Jin Yun has only been on the defensive. With resolve, he decides to use his ultimate attack and see how Jin Yun will block it. He unleashes his whirlwind will-crushing palm strike, creating a small vortex that hurtles toward Jin Yun, who grins at the powerful technique. However, he says that it is too large. Calmly, he seizes Shin's foot in his hand, making him cry out in pain, and then throws him to the ground, commenting that he had a good fight. Mayong is pouting because they have gained nothing good from this humiliation. Seeing the angry face of Lord Weiyang, Jin Yin cannot understand the reason for it. Meanwhile, Lord Weiyang is shaking with fury because he knows that Jin Yin is truly invincible, and bringing another man would be a waste of time. The issue is that the ruler association's honor will be shattered, and he and his clan will also be shamed by this defeat. Choosing a new strategy, he asks Jin Yun to take a stroll to the market. He notes the tranquil atmosphere there, and says that Jin Yun must have many partners from this area. Without wasting any more time, he offers Jin Yun a spot in the ruler association. He clarifies that Jin Yun does not need to enroll his entire merchant group, as he can join as a single man, and his merchant group will still be protected. Jin Yin is stunned by the proposition, knowing that this association already boasts the names of powerful clans. But he raises the point that the ruler association is made of clans that left the Murim Alliance, which was once made up of the 9 great sects. Lord Weiyang agrees, while making the excuse that they are simply friendly competitors of the Murim Alliance. Jin Yin considers the information he has. The Weiyang clan had only just joined the association, and now wishes to restore their honor after this defeat. Lord Weiyang also confirms his theory by saying that his subordinate, Weiyang Hu, was spreading bizarre rumors about Jin Yin, which greatly harmed the clan's good name, though he himself has no issue with him. That is why he wants Jin Yun to join the ruler association to save face. This, he thinks, is his only chance to prove to his association that a man like Jin Yun is under him. Jin Yun asks what would occur if he said no. Lord Yuyang says that he would lose nothing by accepting it, and as a merchant's son, he should know that. Jin Yun replies that he has no business with a common martial arts group when he has no lack of money. Then he dismisses him, ending the discussion. At that, Yuyang becomes truly enraged and threatens if Jin Yin wishes his entire group to be killed, which gives our hero a moment's pause. Yuyang warns him that he has enough strength to annihilate the entire merchant group while sparing Jin Yun's life and making him a public enemy. He asks if Jin Yun truly believes he is powerful enough alone to destroy an entire clan, let alone the ruler association. Before he can continue his threat, he receives a powerful punch from Jin Yun, who warns that he will kill him first and then eradicate his entire clan afterward. He even says he'll pin the blame on Weiyang's eldest son, warning that it's better if Weiyang does not provoke him. Lord Weiyang still has the nerve to call his words the most despicable he has ever heard, and accuses him of being a man with no honor or decency. With that, he unleashes his poison toad broad strike, which is a technique Weiyang specialists are taught to use against masters of the 4 great clans. He is sure that even with all his power, Jin Yun cannot survive this single strike, but he freezes when he sees that Jin Yun is emitting lightning arcs that are consuming his poison. The next moment, Jin Yun punches him so hard that Weiyang hits the wall and crumples to the floor, spewing blood. Jin Yun notes that Weiyang is far weaker than he pretends to be. Weiyang tells him to end his life now, because no matter what happens, Jin Yun will become a wanted man by doing this, and the ruler association will hunt him down as well. No matter what occurs, Weiyang says Jin Yun will absolutely lose. Hearing this, Jin Yun moves closer to Yuyang, whispering grimly that he will make him regret those words for the rest of his life. After some time, everyone sees Jin Yun hauling Lord Yuyang by his hair. They are stunned by his condition, especially his own sons. Myung protests, but Jin Yun silences him, warning he will endure the same fate as his father. Another son worries about his father's life, but Jin Yun says that he is alive for now and tells his men to ready a carriage. The eldest son of Yuyang demands to know his reason for committing such an act. Jin Yin states that their father had threatened to butcher his merchant group and frame him as the one responsible, which leaves the entire group speechless. Then he declares that he is going to the ruler association to report this affair in person. He tells the Yuyang guards to go with him as witnesses. Before he can go on, Shin says that the ruler association has no central base. He tells him that their meetings are often held at the estates of the clan masters. In this case, he can go to the Moyang clan estate, which is the nearest. With that, he orders his guards and the Yuk brothers to watch Lord Wiang's disciple and sons. Then he turns to his middle brother and tells him to create a report to get to the Muram Alliance about today's conflict. They then travel toward the Moyang estate. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Wiang is tied with ropes and asks for their destination. Jin Yun tells him. The next moment, Wiang tells his guard to fetch him some water as he is thirsty. The guard pauses, unsure if our hero will allow. But Jin Yun, on the other hand, is surprised that the lord of a clan is asking for water. Yet, he does not agree. He knows this man must be an assassin. With that, he electrocutes him with his light. Then the driver asks about the disturbance. But Jin Yun tells him to continue driving. He then turns to another guard and asks about his assassin's guild. He says that it is called the Gold-Silver Assassin Group, as they are often ranked by gold or silver class. And he himself is a silver class assassin. Jin Yun then asks Lord Wiang about the price of hiring such men. But Wiang is unwilling to reply. So our hero threatens to snap his bones, which makes him agree. He says that he paid 800 Niang, far higher than their normal price. But our hero notes that it was not worth his life, because the assassin group's master was to kill him afterward, after he had slaughtered the entire merchant group. Killing assassins, he says, is the common way for clans to hide their dirty work. He adds that this is the common way clans erase their tracks. In this manner, his life is worth no more than 800 yen, and he tells the assassin to train more to increase the value of his life. Jin Yun changes his voice, saying that a man who kills others for coin should not be called human at all, and he even claps with sarcasm for the assassin's life's work. Then he casually notes that their group of 3 assassins now has 1 wounded and 1 deceased. After some time, they arrive at the Moyang estate. Everyone sees Lord Yang, and they are intrigued by both the crisis and Jin Yan's identity. At last, Moyang Bin, the master of the Moyang clan, arrives and asks about Yu Yang's condition. Then he turns to Jin Yun and introduces himself. Jin Yun also introduces himself, though he does not quite understand, because the last time he checked, Moyang Chu was the clan's master. Bin asks for the reason behind the Wiang clan master being hauled in by Jin Yun, as if he were some common criminal. Jin Yun says he will answer and explains the whole affair. One of Bin's men says that this is a serious problem, especially since the Muram Alliance will soon know of. But Bin silences him and asks Jin Yun's reason for bringing this crisis directly to him. He says he doubts Jin Yun understands the peril of the ruler association, so he thinks Jin Yun has come to tell the truth beforehand. Then our hero asks about his plan to handle this problem, as it may ultimately fall to him. Bin thinks the true answer is to eliminate the threat, but someone like Wiang Zhang's murder can easily grow into making the whole Wiang clan his foe, while putting him under the watch of the Muram Alliance. At that moment, Wiang begins to scream at Bin, saying that he is the one who created all this trouble, that his insults forced him into doing it. Then he begs him for his help, swearing he will do anything as repayment. Striking him down, Bin says that Wiang has no honor remaining. He then tells his men to seize the assassins, while keeping them alive and under guard. Afterward, he formally apologizes for all the trouble caused by Wiang, saying that the ruler association will no longer aid the clan. Then he asks Jin Yun to join him for a meal, and Jin Yun accepts. After a time, the food is set out before both of them, and Jin Yun eats until he is full. Meanwhile, Bin cannot even grasp how a man like Jin Yun, who defeated the Wiang clan master, can exist. To test him, he asks what plan Jin Yun will use to resolve this crisis, since no matter what, he cannot kill Saiyong, but must handle it in a logical way. Jin Yun asks about his own plan instead. So Bin begins to detail his strategy to give Saiyong to the Muram Alliance, which can absolve them of Saiyong's crimes and transfer the blame onto the Wiang clan. Besides, to protect their own standing, the ruler association is prepared to absorb the damage, and he is certain that other clan masters will agree. Jin Yun likes the plan. Then he asks if the former clan leader, Moyang Chu, went through the golden basin hand washing ceremony, which is a type of retirement ceremony. Hearing this, Bin says that Jin Yun is behind on the news of the Jianghu world because his father has been gone for a year. He is shocked by this. Bin says that they sent a search team of main branch members, but found absolutely no trace of him. At that moment, our hero thinks it is the same day he was reborn in Jin Yun's body. It means that along with him, Chu also perished. So, he asks if Chu had any conflicts with the demonic faction. Bin replies that the demonic faction has been dormant for 20 years, and if they were to move again, he would have known of it. Besides, he doubts that the demonic faction has a motive to attack his father. At that, he thinks of his past life. He also had no quarrel with the faction, but was abruptly ambushed and murdered. To gauge the situation, he asks how long Bin's father would last if he were ambushed by a number of swordsmen. Bin replies that his father is not a man who can be beaten by common swords. Our hero then asks, what if those swordsmen had blade-proof bodies? This leaves Bin at a loss for words now. Thinking of his final battle when he tried to attack those killers, he recalls how they survived. Even after being hit by his 9th phase lightning energy, he knows that no normal man can take even a 9th phase lightning energy if he attacks with his current body's power. He cannot believe that someone like them can survive his power, so he knows that they must have blade-proof bodies. Or something equally unbelievable if men with such power, including the sorcerer who once took control of his body, were to join together. He thinks only a man beyond the heavens could face such a power. So he is sure that Ben will not be finding any trace of his father or the demonic faction. Yet, he still does not know the reason behind their hidden movements or their true goal in doing this. Meanwhile, in a desolate land, a woman called the Heavenly Demon speaks to a man known as the Sword Demon and tells him that they have located the Sword King. The Sword Demon